I mean, until recently it would have been like John Utzon, the Danish architect who designed the Sydney Opera, but he just died actually, sadly. I mean, I have a lot of sort of architectural heroes, but sort of I'll say probably I used to work for M. Koolhaas, which was like at the time the only place I could imagine working. And now that we're in the Americas, and since he is still alive, like Oscar Niemeyer has been a great inspiration. I think so specifically in a sort of being in a Miami context. I think Niemeyer was one of the first architects who managed to take modernism out of this sort of purely rigorous, rational, dogmatic, orthogonal regime, and made it more like an instrument of the imagination rather than just this sort of dogmatic application of like a new set of rules that was almost as inhibiting as the historical styles that modernism was rebelling against. I mean, like no doubt that he has had like a major influence on the public perception of architecture, and I think maybe his greatest contribution is that obviously with the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which I think is a great building. You can debate how much his architecture is an instrument for the development of society rather than a purely aesthetic exploration. But I think what he has done is he has, in a way, helped invent the celebrity architect. And one of the benefits of that is that you quite often go and watch a movie because you like the actor or you think the actress is beautiful, not because you know what the movie is going to be all about. And basically, like, so famous movie stars, they sell movies and they might actually inspire you to see a really good movie just because you wanted to see the beautiful movie star. And in the same way, I think people like Frank Gehry has helped create a greater interest in architecture and a greater interest in the possible diversity of architecture than before him. I was about to say it's almost the opposite, but that's also not true. Anyway, I think what happened with less is more is that at the time it was incredibly liberating that architecture was drowning in the application of different historical styles, Baroque and neoclassic, whatever, like all kinds of historical styles were being sort of amassed on architecture. It was becoming this like purely academic exercise. And with less is more, it was this like refocus, trying to achieve more with less. With yes is more, what we're trying to introduce as an idea is that quite often architects see on one hand the pure architectural idea, and then on the other hand the interaction with the pragmatic interests of society. And quite often you hear architects saying that their architectural vision was watered down to some kind of a lowest common denominator through a series of compromises interacting with the world. And rather than having this sort of preconceived idea about architecture and then trying to smash it into society until it gets chopped down to some kind of a ghost of itself, we believe in the idea of starting to look at society, at the different forces, the different interests that operate, and use, basically by saying yes to all those often conflicting demands, use that as a way to force the architecture into sometimes almost impossible somersaults when you have to make both the investor and the neighbors and the politicians and the residents and the offices and the housing happy at the same time. So basically when a building needs to do more, it gets forced into being more interesting architecture, whereas when you separate things, you only solve one problem at a time. You get this sort of a boring house here, a boring parking here, and a boring office building there. Yeah, ideally it shouldn't be about creating problems, at least, which I think in many people's minds that's what architects do. I think it's about creating potentials, like out of so the primordial soup of society, to discover underutilized potentials or hidden resources and make them available for human life.